The NBA wars are broken. Wemby has taken over. The Thunder dynasty has either collapsed or is only starting. This is the Knicks' year. Welcome to the hyperbolic first episode of Business Decision for 2026. I'm Mike Vorkunov, a reporter at The Athletic. Today, on this episode of my show, where we still wish people Happy New Year in mid-January, I'm going to ring in 2026 with a bunch of big questions and good answers about the NBA. My guest today is James Herbert, a national NBA writer for CBS Sports. We'll tell you why you're wrong, he's right, and I'm going to look like a genius. We're each packing three big questions for the NBA this year, a good discussion on if the NBA killed the MVP awards this season, and critically, the question that no one actually truly cares about, I think, if the East has a favorite. But first, James, what's going on? I'm happy you're here.
Yeah, Happy New Year. It's January 5th right now. I don't think it's too late to say Happy New Year. Come on.
So, some people are big like, hey, first day of January, maybe second day of January, you're out. And that's it. Stop talking to me about it.
You get at least a week of grace period, I believe, especially if you haven't seen the person already. You can't just say Happy New Year repeatedly to the same person, but I think it's fine.
All right. Okay. I'm happy you're a little bit more lenient as I am and as I hope to be for a few more weeks here in January. So if you see me in the streets, anyone, or you know me, feel free to text me Happy New Year whenever you want in this month of January. In February, it's a little weird. We're moving on to other holidays. James, today, as I kind of said earlier, we're going to do a few things. First of all, we each come with New Year's tidings and three big questions about the NBA this year. So we haven't discussed it with one another.
We're probably going to overlap here, I bet.
We may, but I'm going to try to be as obscure as possible. When I did a version of this back in the fall with Fred Katz, where we talked about the 10 people that will dominate NBA this year, he completely took over the show. You're a better person than he is. So I assume you're not going to try to do that and commandeer. And I don't care if Fred hears me. He knows this. He knows what I think of him for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's your show. I'll let you lead the dance here.
Okay. I don't think I've ever led a dance. I think even at my own wedding, I was just told where to go and what to do. So this is all new for me. Sorry if it's a little choppy. All right, let's get right into it. Three big questions for the NBA for the year of our Lord 2026. What will become of the aspiration investigation? How hard would the Clippers get hit? That's my first question. Was that on your bingo board?
No.
Okay, cool. I'm happy we don't overlap right from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed. I recall Bill Simmons saying pretty recently that he was hearing whispers that we might get a Friday news dump about this like before the new year. And that just didn't happen. And I don't know if you're hearing any of the same sort of whispers that it's coming up soon, but I'm very curious what's going to happen here, especially now that Kawhi is like the best player in the world again. Well, maybe not literally the best, but like oftentimes he's playing like it these days.
Yeah, I had not heard those whispers. I guess there are now shouts that they were not going to be Friday news dumped before the end of 2025, because here we are. It is really interesting because this whole conversation probably looks a little bit different now than it did before the start of the season, because as you said, Kawhi Leonard, very good again. And for the time being, big asterisk TBD, we'll see in like 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, healthy for the time being, but he's playing out his mind. And, if we did the little New York Times election needle of was all of the adjective that trade and now the aspiration investigation worth it, it's back to, okay, Kawhi's pretty good. It might be worth it again. No, I just said the investigation. I did not say there was any impropriety that went on. That will be up for the NBA to decide and all of that. And if any new reporting by anyone uncovers anything else, I'm just saying about whether the adjective has been worth it. Because for a long time, I would say maybe somewhere between like last spring to this November, it was, the New York Times needle was going the other way.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers started out the season really horribly, but I would say even before this recent run where he's just looked absolutely incredible and the athleticism has sort of, I mean, it seemed like it's all the way back. Like he's making lots of really crazy, ridiculous plays. Like the beginning of the year when he was on the court, he was playing really well. And when they were losing, it was not his fault. It was not Harden's fault either. It was just aside from those two guys playing well individually, nothing was working. They had just their whole identity had collapsed and they looked like a mess. But he was still really good. And I think even if the Clippers were still kind of playing just like crap and they're a laughing stock and all of that. If you were talking about, all right, this guy could just like his contract could be voided and he could be picked up by anybody. Like if that were like the conversation we were having, that would still be something that would have the potential to like shake up the title contention picture, because I don't think there has really been a time at all, aside from like a playoff game or two when he came back and he really shouldn't have been playing. Like aside from like those like one offs here or there, like when he has been on the court, he has played at an all-star level, pretty much without exception. It's just now he's playing like all NBA first team type of level, and that's been really fun to see. That's played a huge part in the Clippers actually looking decent again.
Mhm.
Even though their record, like they still have a hill to climb because of the way they started the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean they're a team that now at least like we're not talking as much at this point about like, oh, should they consider trading Zubats and just starting the whole thing over? Like they can talk themselves into like, let's try to make a run at the play-in and salvage something out of this.
Yeah, they're only 2.5 games out
Exactly.
of the play-in tournament, and thanks to a kind of a weak bottom of the West top 10, like they're definitely in it. And I think there's probably some positive regression that's gone their way the last
Mhm.
few weeks that's helped them. They weren't as bad as they seemed. I think they were probably overrated to come into the year, and a lot of people saw them as like a true Western Conference contender. I I was bearish on it mostly because I don't like the combination of old age on their rosters. I don't know how good you can possibly be, even if you have depth, which ostensibly they did, if you are extremely old coming into a year. And the Clippers with a lot of players over 30 years old, not even including the one that they sent away in mid-December, like we're probably just a little bit too old for my liking, but they're not this bad and they shouldn't be this bad. And now they have some positive regression going their way and here they are. But James, if the NBA finds that there's a reason to punish the Clippers, they don't have control of their own first round pick until I believe 2030. I think that's right. Like there's not much that the NBA can take from them at this point. They're already in a hole. It's a big question to me. Like, okay, if the punishment comes down, does it even hurt them that much going forward if you're taking away, say, the 2030 first round pick? And if they get away scot free, do they then have an opportunity now to just kind of like start unwinding the previous 5 years a little bit and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean we'll have to see. Like because it depends if they drop the hammer down or not. The hammer could be you know, they have the ability to suspend people in the Clippers organization. They have the ability, in theory, to void Kawhi's contract. They have the ability, in theory, to take away draft picks. Honestly, one thing that hasn't really been tested is like, could they take away draft picks that can't even yet be traded? Like, could they extend even past the window of like where you would consider like the current picks that they own? Like, maybe they could
Yeah.
in this scenario, just because we haven't faced it before. But if it is a sort of slap on the wrist, or if they don't find any actual evidence of wrongdoing and they do get away scot free, like you said, then yeah, I mean that puts them basically where they thought they were before all of this came out, which is, trying to be as good as they can in the short term, but also having a ton of money coming off their books and being able to position themselves for the future, albeit not in a typical way, because it's not like they could go into just a full rebuild and tank the next couple of years, because that's just straight up not possible. But they would at least have a great deal of flexibility. Like when idiots like me were hyping up their off season and predicting all sorts of wonderful things in their future, part of it was they were able to add depth and add reinforcements without taking on money into the future. So they did still have a lot of flexibility. So I think their front office, like if you just look at their cap sheet, it's very clear kind of the timeline that they're working on. And yeah, if there's not a big punishment, then they can just kind of stick to that. I think they clearly thought they would have a better chance of doing something meaningful this year than it appears they do now. But I don't think what has happened this season has necessarily changed their medium term outlook at all.
I am curious though, because there's another reason why the NBA's investigation into aspiration in the Clippers is important, which is, will it serve as a deterrent for the rest of the league? Like I was talking to an NBA executive last week, and we're talking about how he feels like if the NBA doesn't come down hard on the Clippers, you know, there hasn't been any ironclad proof that something happened, but there's been a lot of smoke. you can get into circumstantial evidence territory. And if the Clippers don't get hit for this, what does this mean for other teams and their ability to kind of like walk that fine line where, something like this may happen in the future? And I think there's a lot of question about kind of the deterrent effect of the NBA, what it does here with its punishment or non-punishment of the Clippers and what it means for the rest of the league.
Yeah, and that's why I think if it is seen as as a slap on the wrist or as something that is not, the prototypical like hammer coming down on them or like they're making an example out of them, I think there will be some executives that have a lot of questions that will be angry because I think, you can debate whether or not there's a true smoking gun. You can debate whether or not there was enough evidence to come down harshly on them from what has already been reported. But I think for a lot of people within the NBA, just like for a lot of readers and like, listeners of podcasts, like when they were going over just what Pablo Torre reported, they had the same reaction, which is this looks really bad. And for a lot of executives, there are certain things within the NBA that are, unwritten rules. And there are certain things where it's like, all right, if you're just talking about some like back in like some light tampering,
But tampering is a written rule. It's written down. You don't do it.
That is a written rule. But if you're
so is cap, so is cap circumvention, also a very big written rule.
But what I'm trying to say is, if you're talking about some light tampering, some contact with a free agent or his representation before free agency starts and all of that, I don't think most people within the league are going to be shocked or like super offended by it. When it comes to cap circumvention, I do think there's kind of a red line there. And I do think everybody within the league wants to think that they're playing on an equal playing field here. And I think there was a lot of kind of animosity directed toward the Clippers in the immediate aftermath of that reporting. And I don't think that's just magically gone away a few months later just because it hasn't been in the headlines. Like as soon as a decision comes down, there's going to be a reaction, not just from like people like us, but from people in the league, some of whom have extremely strong opinions on this subject.
Yeah. And look, I obviously Pablo Torre's done his reporting. I've done my own reporting on it, and I have yet to find the ironclad proof. The NBA obviously has more resources than I do. It has a little bit more power at its discretion than I do, but I'm curious if they find the ironclad proof as well, and if they surface it, and where we land on this investigation. James, what's your top question for 26 for the National Basketball Association?
So let's just start right at the top. How will we see the Thunder at the end of this year? They're not on pace anymore to have the best season ever. But there's still a world in which they kind of rampage through the playoffs. They win second straight title. And then, oh, by the way, they have the Clippers pick. Maybe they have the Jazz pick. And we're talking about them as, this is the start of another dynasty and something maybe even unprecedented, just given how young and good they already are. That's one end of the spectrum. And then there's the other end where we're just kind of talking to them as among a group of very good teams that have a chance to win a title. And maybe we're discussing their flaws more than their strengths if they fail to repeat this year. And these 3 losses to the Spurs, as well as, they lost to the Suns last night. They had an interesting loss, I think, to the Wolves a little while ago, has made them like, I'd say it's taken the air of invincibility away from them. Clearly, that doesn't mean that they're not the favorites anymore. That doesn't mean that, if you thought Sam Presti and Mark Dagnall were 2 geniuses a month ago, that now they're not as smart as they were. Like, no, this is still obviously a great team, potentially a historically great team, but, they looked vulnerable in last year's playoffs, like against the Nuggets, definitely against the Pacers as well. And we've seen them looking a little more vulnerable lately. So I'm really curious to see if we're going to have any sort of flashbacks to those difficult moments, like when the playoffs start this year. I'm curious whether we're going to get to see them play a series against the Spurs. I think everybody is hoping to see that at this point. And I genuinely don't know, as great as they've been, I don't know what we're all going to think about the Thunder, 12 months from now.
So why didn't we think that the Thunder were not fully invincible after the Nuggets took them to 7 games and after the Pacers had a lead at halftime of Game 7 of the NBA Finals?
because they started this year with their second best player and all NBA player out of the lineup and still lost once in the first like couple months of the season.
I mean, they started last year pretty well. They won 68 games. They had an amazing point differential, and then
Yeah.
they also won the NBA title. But they got pushed to the limits.
I think it's the way that they were doing it. Like the defense in an era where it is hard to just shut teams down because just how talented everybody is. The obviously the spacing and the way the game changed, all of that, but just like look at the numbers. Just to have a defense that is that much better than everybody else in the NBA, like this, you still could make the argument this is the best defense that has ever existed. And then, oh, by the way, on the offensive side, regardless of who was on the floor, seemingly, they were able to look really good on that end. I think they were able to look a little more cohesive sometimes than they did last year. They had fewer of those moments where the offense kind of, got stagnant and guys had to create at the end of the shot clock and all of that. Like they looked like they had come through after being tested in the playoffs last year with a stronger sense of who they are, with some new guys developing, like AJ Mitchell coming into the mix and just being one of the league's best bench players from literally opening night. Shea getting even better. Hartenstein being better in year 2. Chet making a mini leap. I think you just kind of looked at them like, all right, this is a juggernaut. And I don't know if anybody's even going to take more than a game from them. That was what we thought like 3-4 weeks ago. And I think that was reasonable based on the way they were playing. They're on pace to have the best record in NBA history. And that's, they could still, I mean, if they win their next 5, I think they'll be at the halfway mark on pace for 70. That's still pretty awesome. But I think what we have seen lately is not abnormal for a great team, but it does probably put us in a better place of being like, all right, like there is a world in which they get upset, but it is not shocking, like if the Nuggets do push them again, if the Rockets push them, and of course, obviously now if the Spurs and Thunder go 7, or if the Spurs beat them, it would be crazy for anybody to be like astounded by that. The Spurs have looked superior when they face each other this year.
I want to get into that, but I my second question, which you ruined, so thank you, was
Sorry.
how many top 10 picks will OKC end up with this draft? And I feel like that may not explain, that's not the right way. It may project the future for the Thunder significantly more than how they do this spring. Like they'll either win the title or they'll probably come really close. I don't expect to see the Thunder losing in the second round, right? That's not an expected outcome for me. I mean, listen, maybe everyone gets hurt and it's AJ Mitchell starting games and playing 40 minutes a night in the second round, but it's just not something I'm expecting.
Well, they also could see the Nuggets in the second round again.
They could. And we'll get, but like, so I think how many top 10 picks they end up with is going to be so important for a few reasons. One, if they end up with a number 1 pick in this draft, top 3 pick in this draft, top 4 pick, because I know some people like Caleb Wilson at UNC
love him.
Who think he should go into kind of the conversation with AJ DeBonza, Darren Peterson, and Cam Boozer. You add one of those dudes to what OKC has already, and he's on a cost-controlled rookie contract, which means you get extremely high upside young talent at low wages for the next 4 years. Like, that's incredible. And it allows them so much more flexibility too, right? It allows them to tinker with their roster and do some things going forward. And let alone if you have, they have Utah's top 8 protected first round pick. So if they get number 9 or 10 or whatever, like that's another bullet in their transaction chamber, so to speak. So like what happens there is going to be fascinating to me. And I think that might have a more important long tail for the NBA than just what the Thunder does in May and June.
Yeah, I mean, they could get another star.
They could get the number 1 pick and win a title.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And this is why every dork on the internet like us, or maybe I should just say like me and not implicate you. This is why we have been hyping up Presti in this front office for years and using words like brilliant and unprecedented and all of that.
Well, I mean, it is some level of fortune too, right? Like the Clippers could have just been mediocre, and maybe they will end up mediocre. And this is just, very good luck in a year. But I guess what you're trying
Absolutely.
to say is generally, parents don't let your kids grow up to be GMs who trade away unprotected first round picks 6, 7 years into the future.
There's that. And there's also, like, if you are rebuilding, like, try to emulate as much of what the Thunder did as possible. You're probably not going to be able to start with the kind of trade that they did, where they get a future MVP plus all of the draft picks that a team is able to trade you, and the swaps and
What do they
everything
get the
else. Like,
best player in the deal and the picks?
you're probably not going to be able to do that, but you can emulate the rest of it, which is like they didn't do half measures here. Like, they really tried to acquire as many picks as they possibly could. They did all sorts of little things that allowed them to get all of these. It's the same theory as like what the Sixers were doing years ago. It's like, you're not going to hit every pick, but you want to get as many bites as the apple as you can. And the Thunder were able to kind of supercharge this process by getting like that good that early, and now still being in this position where they don't have crazy financial commitments, and they do have all these extra picks while they are the best team in the NBA. Like, that does not usually happen. But even if they weren't this good, they would still be in a position where their outlook was really good, because they were managed in a way that was just like they knew this was going to be a long-term thing, and they were going to make decisions based on that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you can't duplicate what they did, but I think any team would be wise to emulate them, and it'll be scary if they end up with extra picks in this year's draft, if they end up getting the Clippers pick and that moves up, or if the Jazz don't do a soft tank this time and end up giving away the 10th pick or something. Then, like, yeah, it's just congratulations to the Thunder again, and the rest of the league can roll their eyes and kind of sigh and be mad and talk about, well, do we have to do something to change pick protection rules and all of this? Like, I I don't know. I don't really love that whole conversation,
Well,
but I get why teams resent them. That's for sure.
I think the Jazz should tank. Like, why? I mean, why
Mhm.
shouldn't they tank? They have every incentive to tank again for the third straight year. Like, that's something they should be doing. I'm sure, the NBA wouldn't be happy to see it, but I guess in Utah, if the Utah Jazz did it, no one really cares. If everyone was freaking out about the Thunder doing it for a year, no one really seems to mind that the Jazz are doing it for this long. Um, but it is kind of interesting to see that, Sam Presti once again has the future of the NBA in the palm of his hands. And this is going a different direction than the last time it happened, about a decade ago, when they had Durant, Harden, and Westbrook and Ibaka, and this time they are making the most of it. Let me get to my second question, because you ruined what I want to do. And this is kind of a little bit related to what you mentioned. To me, will this be the year of Vic? Like, will this be the year of Victor Wembanyama and the year he takes over the league? Because it seems like we are nearing that point. We are not quite at that point. But also, the reason we might not be at that point is because he can't seem to stay healthy just yet. And that's important too, because the NBA needs a healthy Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs obviously do, but the NBA needs a healthy Victor Wembanyama. Like, so much of their future is hinging on him being one of the biggest, most available stars in the league, right? And the Spurs' future, obviously, I mean, they can win a title this year. I don't think that's crazy to say. We've seen how good this team can be. And so, will this be the year of Wemby is very interesting for me, and a question I want to get an answer to by June, because, if it is, if the Spurs win a title and Victor Wembanyama wins his first title this year at 21, with a
I think he
not
just turned
quite
22, right? I
22.
think.
Okay. At 22, with a not quite fully developed version of all the players on that roster. I mean, like, we're talking about the Thunder and watch out, like this. Yikes. Spurs, watch out.
Yeah. No, I mean, I told you we were going to overlap. My second question was, what are Wemby and the Spurs capable of? And increasingly, it feels like the answer is anything. This has been the potential of Wemby since, we saw footage of him playing against some, French pros in a gym on social media years ago. Like, but now we're looking at him as a no-brainer all NBA guy, assuming he makes the 65 game limit, which we can also discuss. And like, there's a world where at the end of 2026, we're talking about, like, is Wemby just the best player in the world? Like, is it
Mhm.
like, look, we're debating him versus Jokic versus maybe Shea. I think it's wild that they are this good already. if you had asked me a few weeks ago, like after they beat the Thunder in Vegas, I would have said, they were really impressive without Wemby because they'd come into that having won like 9 of 11 or something like that, with him sitting out, and that was a really big win, and like it's crazy because he only played half the game, and they're way ahead of schedule, but like don't burden them with the expectations of they have to compete for a championship now. Like
Why not?
this is a young team. No, this is what I would have said then
Oh,
after
okay.
the NBA Cup game.
Now we can.
Now it would be crazy not to. Like we just saw them beat the Thunder 3 times. They have looked great with and without Wemby on the floor. Like basically every part of their system is working. They look incredible on both ends. Like I couldn't be higher on their future. They're not a flawless team. You saw it in like their loss to the Jazz the other day. Like sometimes they just go cold from deep, and like they just don't have a ton of shooting, and some guys have been shooting a little over their head this year. But I mean, Thunder, like that isn't a huge strength of theirs either. Like they're kind of built in similar ways, which is what makes this such an exciting rivalry that is brewing here. So yeah, I mean, I think just they're capable of absolutely anything. And I'm curious, not only like, yeah, like to your point, Wemby needs to stay healthy. Um, Also like they could do anything they want in between now
Hmm.
and the deadline. I don't know that they're going to be a big swing type of team. But even if they just make a sort of minor win now move, to add another piece or to, you know, like the Sohan thing is not really working out. I still think he's a good
No.
player. I don't think he really fits there anymore. There are plenty of teams that like might be willing to give up something for him, or he could be part of a bigger swap involving some other player, like whatever it is. I think you could see them strengthen their roster for a playoff run. And at that point, like I can't think of another matchup that I will have been as excited about as a potential Spurs Thunder matchup like in recent years. Like, I wanted to see the Clippers and Celtics meet in the finals, and that never happened. Like there's certain things, but like this Spurs team, the way that they are constructed, the way that these guards are playing, the way that Wemby is able to just shut down everything defensively, it's incredible. And we have to start thinking about them not just as, they're positioned super well for the long term and all of that. Like it's obvious. No, like they're here now. They mean business right now. And that is like one of the big questions for the rest of the year is like, how will they handle it when they get into the playoffs? Like when they have to throw a counter punch, when they have to make an adjustment, when things aren't going well in a series, when if maybe they're struggling from the outside, that guys are daring their non-shooters to shoot and it's not working. Can they grind out wins anyway? Can they figure things out? They haven't been through that before. So I'm really curious how that will all shake out, but I don't want to dismiss them either because they've already shown us so much.
Yeah. I mean, mostly I think it's going to hinge so much on whether Wembanyama is healthy, right? Like
Yeah.
he is at the center of all this, and he has the last 2 seasons shown an inability to do that consistently. Some of those have been freak injuries, right? Obviously, he had the blood clot last year at the All-Star break. That is more of the freakish outlier type of health situation that you hope it doesn't repeat again. And that's more than an injury. That's like an actual impact on your life. But, hopefully he's able to stay healthy. And I think Spurs Thunder Western Conference Finals would be amazing. Like, that's what James is praying for. All right, what's your second question?
No, that was my second.
All right, what's your third question that's going to count as your second question, and then we'll figure it out after.
All right, so maybe you'll accuse me of being boring. I think I'm obligated to bring up the honest thing. So it's just what is next for him? People may be sick of the storyline. I don't know, whatever. He is one of the best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't know that he will be traded in the next month, but I would be pretty surprised if he signed an extension in the summer. So if we're talking about 2026 as a whole, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Bucks are going to have to back off this
Yeah.
posturing of we are actually buyers. We want to we're good with him. We don't fear anyone in the East. We want to get better in the short term. Like they can do that for the rest of this year, and they can do this dance, and that's all fine. I'd be pretty surprised if they wanted to go into next season with him on the roster without an extension, and I'd be pretty surprised if he did want to sign an extension. So
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Like, is it posturing? It's just so hard for them. One, it's hard for them to get a major deal done like this mid-season, right? Like the way let me be the 50 millionth person to say the new CBA
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
just kind of
I should have
restricts
said their
things.
stance. Not, I don't mean posturing like they're lying. I just
It,
mean their stance is they're trying to get
and
better.
and they're trying to maximize the season. That's why they stretch waived Damian Lillard so they could give a big
Yeah.
contract to Miles Turner, like to then turn around after making that sequence of decisions like 6 months ago would be, I would say, catastrophic because of what it means for your future. To then all of a sudden say, forget it, this didn't work. Not to mention, all the vibes I've gotten talking to people around the league is that there is no Giannis market as of yet. I think that's kind of like the feeling there, and
Yeah.
I mean he could go somewhere in the summer, obviously. But to me, it's a really interesting question too. Is one, there's the financial implications of signing a player for the size of salary that he will get, right? And that he deserves. He's honest. He's amazing. Um, but those are, having those kind of contracts is painful now, especially if you have multiple of them. And what you trade away is a big question. We just talked about the Kawhi Leonard trade and the ramifications of that long term. And thirdly, we just talked about the Thunder as an amazing team, both short and long term. We are
Mm-hmm.
talking about the Spurs as an amazing team long term, and perhaps we will see it short term as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Rockets are pretty good. The Lakers are building around Luka. They're not infallible, but they have a very good player that they've built around. Like, you have to make the decision of if and when you get Giannis Antetokounmpo, what kind of stratosphere are you going to be in once you get that
Yeah.
player?
No, absolutely. And that's why it'll be really interesting to see if anybody makes a real push for him now, if that even matters, because I might just be that the Bucks don't want to hear it. But some of it may depend on what happens in the playoffs. Like a team that thinks that they can compete for a championship ends up losing in the first round.
I feel like it
Means
has to be an
maybe
East team, like, doesn't
they're
it?
more.
The East is just so much more open. Like, if you're going to make that trade, you're talking about, hey, let's get this, let's have him help us get out of the East, and then we're in the
Yeah.
finals, and then who knows what happens. And if that's the case, that limits 15 teams. Like, that makes it a very small marketplace for the Bucks, right? Not to mention the Bucks have a decision to make, which is not only trade Giannis, yes or no. They have to decide, honor Giannis's intentions, be willing to have him kind of like determine a destination. He'll have a year left on his contract, right? Or try to maximize your return. All of those things are not in the same Venn diagram necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, I think it also depends like what their calculus is on what's best for them. Because I think you could have made a case easily, and I made this case that last summer they should have traded him then. They shouldn't have messed around with this Miles Turner stuff and stretching Dame's contract and taking all this money for the next 5 years, like dead money. It just seemed crazy to me. Um, I think there was the case that at that point it wasn't just, oh, Giannis isn't sure what's going to be best for him, but at that point, a different front office may have decided, where are we going now? Like, can we really build another contender around this guy? What are the chances of that happening? Um, if he's torn up about, do I want to officially request a trade or not? And like, why don't we just make his decision easier for him? No, you don't have to request anything. We're trading you.
Yeah, but
And
like, what team has in the history of the NBA? What team has actually done that? Traded a player that good voluntarily? It's been the Mavericks and Luka Doncic, right? And we saw how that worked out for them. It's so hard to get a player that good, a guy who's literally your franchise. Whether it be on court success, whether it be the valuation that your team has seen skyrocket over the 10 years that he's been there. I don't think that there's been a lot of cases of where a team says, hey, we are trading a top 50 player all time because we think it's time. It's usually because they've been nudged / pushed / at gunpoint saying, get me out of here. Or the player has left himself in free agency. But it's true. And I mean, because once you trade Giannis, there's no going back, and God knows what's ahead of you.
I get that. I think this was a kind of special case where I think the roadmap was kind of like the road they actually took. I think where we are now is like extremely predictable. And the downside here is very obvious, in that now, if you accept, which I don't know that they have, but if you accept that it's an inevitability that they will have to trade him in the next, if not now, then in the summer, then you're looking at a way more difficult rebuild than the one that you could have done last summer.
I don't think
Um,
that's true. I think because look, you're already long term. You're squeezed until 2031. I think that's their next first round pick that they could trade, right? So you essentially have okay, that's our exit point. Is 2031. We can actually rebuild and kind of like do it on our own timeline, right? And make all of our decisions ourselves. So try to be as good as you can until 2031. And a Giannis trade will always be there for you as long as he's under contract. So you want to trade him last summer? Okay. You want to trade him this winter, okay, you want to trade him this upcoming summer, you're going to get good stuff in return in that trade package. And in the interim, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you try to be as good as you can because it has no implications for your your draft pick going forward.
yeah, I think we disagree a little bit. We disagree on this just because I see the like specifically the Dame wave as being very harmful. If I were them, I wouldn't have done that.
But if they're
But
bad, then it doesn't matter. Then they just have 54 million in dead cap, whatever, or 27 million. Sorry
but
for
they
the
could have
next.
used that for a number like would or I get it. I get their justification for it. I just didn't love it. I still don't love it. We'll see
I'm
what they
not saying they
do.
should have done it. I'm not advocating for that. I'm saying the effect of it, I think, is less than having Giannis on your team for as long as you can.
Okay, maybe. I mean, I'm also curious is what are they going to be looking for? Like, do they want?
That's a great
Are they
question.
focused on getting their own picks back? Does that necessitate Atlanta being involved here? Do they want? And that also might motivate them to do it now rather than waiting. Doesn't sound like that's what is motivating them. But do they want just as many picks as they can get? Are there specific franchises picks that they want? Because part of it is if you're taking all the picks from a team that's about to get Giannis, like how valuable are those picks really? Like, are there players that they're targeting?
Yeah.
Because maybe they can get an all-star level player, even an all NBA, maybe all NBA third team or second team type player or something, plus not all of the picks and swaps, but some from a
Yeah.
team that's looking to upgrade from a top 20 player to a top 5 player. Like maybe that's what they're looking for. Like teams aren't always looking for just the picks upon picks upon picks. But
Not in the least because you can't really, sell to kids jerseys of 2029 Hawks first round pick in a little buck, on top
sure.
of a nameplate of a Bucks uniform.
Yeah. So I'm curious what they're going to end up wanting and getting, and obviously when they're going to do it and what all this looks like. Because as you said, like right now, like a month out from the deadline, does not appear likely that a trade is going to happen in the short term, does not appear like there's a huge market, but these things can change really quickly. We've seen it many, many times. And this, it doesn't have to happen in the next month for it to be one of the biggest stories of the NBA in 2026.
Yeah. All right. Do you have one last question or should I just make it a 5 and throw my last one in there?
You can go for it.
All right. My last one, and it's a little obvious, obviously, but what happens to NBA expansion? Adam Silver promised us
Mm,
answers. This summer, he promised us answers, and we want answers, damn it. We need answers. This has been going on for so long. I need closure. This feels like one of those rom-coms where I just need to get a yes or a no so we can move on and there's a happy ending. And, NBA fans are walking hand in hand with the little NBA expansion mascot in Central Park or not. And the impact, look, aside from whatever a team may sell for, that's like NBA business wonks. It's will there be 2 more teams? Does that dilute the players that are in the NBA right now? What does that mean? I mean, teams have already kind of been using the last few years to think about expansion, talking about expansion internally, about what that might mean for them. What happens to players in an expansion draft? Who do you protect? Like that could have a lot of interesting downstream effects on teams and players and the stuff that most of us care about, which is the encore product. So I want answers. I want to know expansion. I want to know how quickly. I want to know where it'll go. And yes, I do want to know for how much each of those teams would sell for. But that's what I want to know.
yeah, I mean, it seems like we're getting closer to an actual answer on this front. Um, Seems like it, like as we've all expected forever, it'll probably be Vegas and Seattle. I think some of the logistics around that are interesting. Like, are are you going to realign? Like, who gets to go to the East, basically? um, and there are a few teams that would like
It's
to
gonna be
be that
Hunger
team.
Games. It's gonna be Hunger
Yeah,
Games amongst West teams to get over to the East.
I mean that would be really funny to have like a little tournament.
Would it be
But
palatable for you to have 31 teams? What if it's one team moves and one team gets added?
I mean, I would be pretty surprised if that was the way that it was going to go. But I mean, you could. I mean, there have been odd number of teams in the NBA before, so in theory, it could happen. But I'd be surprised. Like, who were you thinking might get moved here?
Well, like as Adam Silver is someone who very much parses his words and is a lawyerly mind,
Yes.
usually, it was interesting to me that he did not rule out relocation when he was asked about it last month ahead of the NBA Cup. He did not say, no, we will not relocate any of our fine, upstanding NBA franchises from the cities in which they are homed. He said, no, it's something we can consider based on a number of factors, which are written out in the NBA Constitution. I wrote about it. You can go read all those factors if you want. But like based on what he described, Memphis, New Orleans, those are cities you have to consider as possible relocations. And I just thought it was interesting that he didn't say, no, this is something we definitely will not do. Because he could have said that. He could have said, no, hell no, guys. We're not moving these teams. We love New Orleans. We love Memphis. We love whatever city. We're not leaving it ever, especially because, you know, this would potentially an expansion bring a team back to Seattle, which was the last NBA city kind of hurt by relocation. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought that his inability or unwillingness to rule something out kind of, was noteworthy.
Yeah. I hope I'm not misquoting him. I believe he also said something like that's not just the league's call. Like the franchise has to initiate that process
It
to
does.
relocate. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Um,
Their NBA has to, the team has to start that franchise process to relocate. Obviously that means the owner does, right? But there are
yeah.
ways to make that worthwhile. If you want to sell your team to a new owner for a few $1 billion and the new owner says, hey, I want to move it to Vegas versus Seattle, like
Yeah.
we've seen that happen before.
I don't want to see either of those cities lose their team, but I get why they get brought up. Look,
I'm not advocating for it,
I
but it
think
is
the
an
league, I think
interesting
the
question.
talent level of the league, like it could sustain a 32 teams like pretty easily. I'm not that worried about the dilution at this point.
I think it would be interesting for kind of like the fringes of the rosters because you hear NBA execs already say, hey, there's not much talent in the G League. Hey, that third two-way spot, not much talent there. You add in, 15 more roster spots plus 3 more two-ways. Like that might be kind of something worth watching. And will we see the bottom of the rosters, the 10th man, 12th man, which I think are pretty talented now. Like those players there are pretty talented. And we've
That's
seen a lot of teams prioritize depth the last few years because of that. And especially after the Pacers and the Thunder made their runs to the final last year where they showed, hey, having depth is important. I wonder what expansion would mean for that.
yeah. I personally think that there are still guys if you look at 10th, 11th, 12th men that like clearly could play and they're just because of the numbers game they're not playing right now. Um Once you start talking about the third two-way spot, like, yeah, there may be some like real dilution that you see.
Yeah.
But that to me isn't a terrible outcome either. Those are supposed to be kind of developmental slots anyway. Like, I'm cool with that. Also, like, I mean, the Sixers signed like two legit NBA rotation players for their two-way spots in the offseason. I was like, what is happening
Yeah.
here?
Kudos to the
Um,
Sixers front office on that one. Great job. Scouting
yeah.
department or
So
analytics department.
there's I think I like that wouldn't be the thing that I worry about. We'll see what if the other owners end up actually being in favor of it because it's like giving up equity in the league, basically. Like all of that nerdy stuff that I mean, Silver says it every time it's brought up too.
Sure.
Is like that it's not just up to him.
Yeah.
It's about whether everybody's actually motivated to make this happen. But I think it's overdue. Like I feel really bad for Seattle. They still don't have a team. It's crazy. Um, so I think it'll happen. It's just a matter of do all of the owners agree with that, and when will it actually come to fruition? Because we've been talking about it for what feels like a million years.
This summer.
And
We were promised this summer.
we will find out what the next steps are this summer. I don't know when the teams would actually be playing in the NBA if they go forward with it. But yeah, we'll find out. It's good to know that what we should find out.
Answers this summer or we riot. That's
Yes.
my stance. All right.
Yes.
Thank you for playing this made up game with me, James. I appreciate it. We did promise a few other segments, so I want to get to those. So this is the second segment. We're going to call this, Did the NBA kill its MVP award this year? Do you agree with that statement? Did the NBA kill the MVP award this year? Yes or no?
Uh, it's sort of TBD. Like, if Jokic ends up not being eligible, by virtue of a technicality, then like kind of. But we're gonna have to see where the games played stack up in the end, because I do think some of this is also like, well, we're just assuming that the other main candidates, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is going to remain, like, his health is going to be pristine the rest of the way. We don't know that to be true yet.
Well, that's kind of what makes it
but-
interesting, right? So the NBA 65 game rule says you have to play 65 games to qualify for the MVP award and all other postseason awards. Giannis has already missed 14 games. Victor Wembanyama has missed 14 games. Nikola Jokic seems like he's projected to miss right around that cutoff. We'll see where it lands. If Shai misses games, if he gets hurt, who's winning the MVP award, and does it matter anymore? Like, we'll have a discussion, but it's just going to be like basically it's a pro-rel discussion for award winners.
Yeah, I think they've made this needlessly kind of complicated and needlessly dependent on this like one variable of games played. Like, I thought it was unnecessary from the beginning, just because like award voters, like, we can take that into account ourselves. I don't think there was ever a big problem.
Don't count me
and
amongst the we, though, by the way. I've never gotten an award. I should not be trusted with one.
You'll get one day.
But I do
I'm
want to
surprised
say
you've never had one. But
it's
no, listen, though.
it's kind of, go ahead. I was going to say, it's kind of fascinating, though, right? Because last year we had one of the all-time great MVP award races, I think, between SGA and Nikola Jokic. And I think either one would have been deserving. And if either one won, there should not have been, any crying from either side. But so it's hard for me to say the 65 game rule has ruined the MVP award or awards voting or whatever. It's a bad look this year when you get into a spot where it just may kill the award race this year. It just might be a fait accompli with SGA being the only major candidate who was healthy enough to reach that threshold.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I say we'll have to see. But I think even if the rule didn't exist, if we were going down the stretch of the season and Shai and Jokic were like clearly the two best players in the league over the course of the year, and Shai was on pace to play in like 78 games and Jokic was on pace to play in like 60, like, Shai would be the overwhelming favorite because of games played anyway, because a lot of voters would just use that as a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
I think in that case, voters, like, in my view, voters should still be allowed to put Jokic second instead of just being barred from voting for him entirely. Or maybe they want to put him third or fourth, but this all exists because they were trying to solve a problem that was completely unrelated to the voting process. They were trying to
oversolved.
They were trying to solve for a problem of star players missing games, and
due to load management and injury management and all these types of things, and not for actual injuries, which is what is now stepping into the fray.
Yeah, and I think there's been all sorts of silly kind of after effects of this, where you can talk about, like, I wrote this thing 2 years ago about Dante DiVincenzo playing in literally every game and not being eligible for most improved because he played in less than 20 minutes in a whole bunch of them. This, like, Isaiah Stewart is like clearly an all defense candidate who might be on the fringes of, like, does he play in 20 minutes enough time to qualify to make an all defensive team this year? And that's not like the spirit of the rule.
I wonder if the next CBA they move maybe from 20 minutes to 15 minutes to try to help
maybe
and change for that. I don't know if the 65 game rule thing gets changed though.
I don't know. You would still have this weird thing where, you had Tyrese Halliburton a couple of years ago playing 20 minutes and then checking out when he may have taken some of those games and just rested his actual injury. I don't think managing injuries is a bad thing also. And I just don't think the problem was guys sitting when they were healthy. I think there were some isolated cases of that happening, but mostly it was teams and players being cautious when guys were actually not healthy. Like
Yeah.
people always talked about like Kawhi Leonard load management, like he was just resting for no reason. He had a degenerative condition
Yeah.
and he also just was hurt a lot. So it made sense to not play him on back-to-backs. It made sense to sit him when they looked at his body and they looked at the data that they had and said, you're at risk of doing something worse. Like,
But I think some teams were sitting out players for load management. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it bad because those teams are self-interested and they want to keep their best players healthy over the long period of the whole season and into the playoffs. And maybe their sports science teams determine, hey, this is the best way to do that. Like, I was just reading,
yeah,
I follow Chelsea soccer, and one of the big things with the coach that they just fired was that he apparently might not have been listening to the medical team about how frequently he should be playing players or for how many minutes for that same reason to keep their health.
mhm.
And so there is a real reason, according to some sports science people, to like to just sit guys out for load management for a game or sometime. Now,
I'm agreeing. Yeah.
the NBA has disputed the efficacy of that or shown that there's a positive value to that. So you kind of have to unwind the whole system. And I wonder with the next CBA being in the middle of a media rights deal instead of right before a media rights deal, if there's any changes in this rule that we could see in that new CBA in 2029.
I've had this discussion so many times. It always gets back to the same thing. It's like, well, why are like they're not just resting guys like for fun. Like these are smart people. The sports science guys that are employed by NBA teams. They know what they're doing. And the way to combat this to me, like, would be to shorten the schedule so they didn't find it so imperative that they had to protect their players from what's usually like themselves and their own impulse to try to play when they're hurt,
Yeah.
and play when they're at risk of injury. But that's a whole separate discussion. I think when it comes to this year, we'll see how close everybody is in games played by the end of it. It's certainly looking less interesting than it did before Jokic got hurt, just because it looks like Shea's going to have this massive advantage based on games played. But we'll see. I do think in the end it would be nice if it were up to the voters to weigh those, especially when it came to like all NBA and stuff. But even like MVP, I think it's the same thing. Like if you want it, it should be something that I have to think about. Like, how do I value 65 games of Jokic versus 75 games of player X, like whoever, like Jalen Brunson or Tyrese Maxey or whoever. I'm thinking of there, but instead, if it's like the Magic, if you're below the Magic number, you're just out, and that would have changed some awards in the past. I would have changed like Kawhi Leonard's first DPOY, he played 64 games,
Who's your
and
number
that would
two
just
right
be
now?
stripped away.
If
Hmm?
Jokic is not eligible, who's number two on your ballot?
Well, Jokic, first of all, would have been number one on my ballot.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. Sorry. I don't know. Well,
but
I just said he's not eligible, so I assume SJ is one.
yeah,
So
I
who's
mean,
number two?
it's probably Luca, but not that I've been super impressed with the way the Lakers have been playing lately, but individually, he's still been amazing.
Okay. Jaylen Brown gets into that conversation. Jalen Brunson is in that
Yeah,
conversation.
absolutely.
Kate Cunningham is in that conversation.
Yep. I think that the last straw poll I did, I had Jokic, Shea, Luca. Um, I know I had Cunningham and probably Brunson. I don't know. I don't remember what order. Might have been Brunson, then Cunningham. But yeah, that was the last straw
Here's
poll.
another one for you, and we'll move into our last topic for today. Put these East teams in order of likelihood to make the NBA Finals: the Knicks, the Pistons, the Celtics, and the
This is
Cavaliers.
this is impossible, Bork. You just like I have no idea. Can I make the case for a team that you didn't even mention? I think the East is so open right now. I think the Celtics are super duper interesting.
Uh-huh.
In light of how they've played lately, their offense is nuts. Their defense for
I,
the last couple of weeks has been really good too. A lot of that is just schedule, but like they
those are games you win.
yeah
When we had to do our preseason awards ballot at the Athletic, I had Joe Mazzulla as my coach of the year.
yeah, and I had the Celtics as finishing like 13th in the East or something. Like I thought they were just going to tank. I thought they were going to be hopeless. I've never been so wrong about a team. I don't think like ever. Uh, I'm just constantly amazed by what they're doing. Their style of play doesn't totally surprise me. Just the fact that it's worked this well has
Mhm.
been awesome. Jaylen Brown, I am stunned by like everything that he's done this year.
Yeah.
Just been everything anyone could have ever hoped. Yeah,
Who
they've
who have
been
I
awesome.
forgotten?
But
What's the team? Is
the
it the Nets?
yes,
They're
it's the
8 and
Brooklyn.
3 in their last 11.
Yeah. No, I think the Sixers should be in this conversation,
Okay.
Roy. I
Now
think
we're
you have to
talking.
include them. Um,
Joel Embiid just dunked. Like,
he did. And like
we're
actually looking more like himself now. Like
he is.
some like driving to the basket, rotating on defense,
Yeah.
jumping. He's
Jumping.
jumping. That is a
He's
big deal for
he
a
is no
basketball
longer
player.
jumping at Jokic-like levels. He is now jumping at Embiidish-like
Yeah.
levels.
No, but I've been encouraged by the way he's been trending, and then everything else about the team just makes so much sense. He's a superstar. Uh, I love the way that they use him. Edgecombe from day one, awesome. I wrote about him early in the year, but he's just getting better and better and more confident. Just stepping up in crunch time of all these games and making huge plays. Still doing like making like you never know on a given possession if he's gonna like create a play for himself out of nothing
Yeah.
and be a hero that way, or if he's gonna like sky in for an offensive rebound or dive on the floor for a loose ball. Like it's all of the role player stuff and like the
Yeah.
energy guy stuff with this star potential and
Yeah.
flashes of like being you know primary playmaker stuff where he'll never have to be a primary playmaker playing next to Maxi, but it's really nice. Like some of the reason why they're like Maxi's having such a good year is you can have VJ bring the ball up and initiate. You can have Grimes do that. You can have Paul George do that now, and you can run great stuff for Maxi off the ball and get him the ball with an advantage. And he's killer as an off-ball player. I love how Paul George has fit in. A lot of their role players are looking really good right now. They haven't had Kelly Oubre since mid-November,
Yeah.
and that like I think that'll be a boost when he comes back. Their spacing will just be better, but they manage the spacing issues that they have extremely well. I think like Barlow's been great for them, even though he's not a real floor spacer. You've seen Jabari Walker do good things for them despite that. I really like the way that they're playing recently. I like the way that they're trending, and I think they're everybody who has been kind of optimistic publicly about the Sixers has been doing that somewhat reluctantly just because of like the history of the team over the
You've
past
been
few
burned
years, and there's
before,
always a
yeah.
risk that whoever they're talking to is going to immediately make fun of them. But I've like felt pretty good about this team like all season, and I really like the way that things are coming together now. So I'm not
Yeah.
like picking them to win the East or anything, but I think if you're going to mention all those other teams, like please, like mention the Sixers.
No, you're right. That was an oversight on my part, and you're right. The Sixers should be in that conversation. They have been. I mean, listen, the VJ Edgecombe thing. I think that the Sixers should get more credit, and Daryl Morey should get more credit for taking him at number 3. The entire top 4 of that draft has been great so far, and I think the easy thing would have been to just take Ace Bailey at number 3, right? He was the highest stature recruit coming into the year and midway through the year. And maybe might be my bias. Someone who watched a lot of Rutgers basketball games last year. I was like, wow, he's talented. He's long. He can hit all these really hard shots that he probably shouldn't be taking anyway. But no, they did the work and they took VJ Edgecombe, and like that has turned out to be a great pick. He's been just like so much fun to watch, just so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Let alone the actual how good he is part of it. And that team has worked well. You have Maxey as now kind of the clear alpha, I think, of that team. As Joel Embiid returns to his, well, I don't know what form he will return to, but he is playing better and he is being more productive. And Paul George, I think, is playing better than he was last year. And so you have now a really good top 4, right? Like that's very valuable for them. And you're right. If, the Cavaliers haven't gotten it together this year, and the Knicks, NBA Cup champions though they may be, still have some questions about them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the Pistons I like. They played well. Kate Cunningham is an NBA MVP contender now. There's still questions about them, right? Like, and how good
Of
they will
course.
be. And so if the Sixers make the finals, it would be surprising, but I wouldn't say it would be like out of the blue, to your point. And I'm kind of curious. I want to see one healthy playoffs from Joel Embiid.
Yeah, so
Not
does the rest of
not
the
in the
world.
like
Yeah.
prove it sense, but in the I just want to see him healthy for playoffs just to see what that looks like, because I think that'll be a lot of fun. And he's been hurt so frequently. It would just be nice to see that for him.
It would be so awesome if that happened the one year where like people have just widely given up on the prospect of that ever even happening.
Yes. Yes.
He finally
I
does. That
think,
would
but
just
listen,
would be
in
beautiful.
November, we were all like, this might not be the Joel Embiid we ever see again, right? Like, we just might never see that Embiid again. And he is slowly returning and getting better.
Yeah, he's getting back there. He's looking more confident. He's looking more sure of himself. He's still not. I don't think he's like out there forcing it all the time. Like some games he is getting a lot of shots up and stuff, but like even in those games, like you see him just actively kind of ceding control of the offense to Maxi or like sometimes to Edgecombe Grimes, like depending on who's on the floor with him.
Yeah.
Like he's not Mr. I like demand touches all the time and I demand to be the focal point.
Yeah.
I like the way that he's approached things. I like the way in general the Sixers have kind of managed him and Paul George. I know they both got started later than a lot of people wanted and people were getting impatient, but I think that was a smart thing to do. I think um, it has allowed them to have an identity that doesn't depend on either of those guys being out there, but I think they have fit in pretty well.
Yeah.
And their drive and kick game has just been really strong all year. The off ball stuff for Maxi has been really strong all year.
And one
And
of my
I
favorite
think,
actions in the NBA remains the Maxi and Embiid two-man game, especially when they're on the wing. And Embiid did this the other night where he does this from time to time. They'll run that two-man game on the wing, and Maxi will come flying around, and Embiid will go between the legs with a pass for him.
yeah.
And that's just fun. It's whole heart. It's nice, whole family fun.
Yeah, I think it's fun to see them doing that again. And teams have been like, if you just give Embiid the ball, like most of the year, like he's even when he was kind of playing like crap, he was drawing double teams.
Hmm.
He was still able to attract attention. It was more the defensive side that I think was the bigger like the scarier part early on in the year, and that's still a work in progress. He's still not playing at a level consistently where it's like you can just trust that he's going to hold down the paint the way that he used to. But I have been encouraged by how it's been lately. Uh, guys are going to go at him. Guys are going to test him. They're going to put him in the pick and roll. They did that even when he was like making all defensive teams. But he's
Yeah.
just not a super fast, super mobile guy. He doesn't want to go out to the perimeter all the time. It makes sense. But he has like when he is rotating from one side to the other, when he's making more than one effort on the same play, when he is like jumping to get a rebound and guys aren't just jumping over him. Like they're a different team and I think they're starting to look a lot more functional, a lot more whole. Um, I am I have no idea how you could predict that he would make it through all those playoff rounds and they could make it to the finals, but like I wouldn't want to play them in the first round. I'll say that. Like
No.
I think they're a lot of these teams I look at and it's like, all right, like Detroit, like I have this like big question about like their spacing in the playoffs. It's kind of a different game. The Knicks, as great as like as far as they got last year and everything, I have this like you still have Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on the floor at the same time. Like I have questions about their defense in the playoffs. With Philly, like I don't have as many like basketball questions if they're all healthy and like playing well. Like it doesn't mean they don't have flaws and or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's just like it's more a matter of just like, all right, like are they actually going to be there? Like are they going to be a functional team? Can they keep this up? Like these guys have played top four played like 6 games together, like 90 something minutes.
Yeah. But listen, the nice thing
Like
is 5 teams. That means 2 of them have to play in the first round.
yeah, I know, and we're gonna get like a great couple of first round series there. I think even like the Celtics, like with Tatum back in the fold, like
Wow.
if they
Slow
get
down.
him,
Slow
no,
down.
I'm saying like the theoretical Celtics, like what is their ceiling? Like I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
We know what their
so
ceiling
like
is. We've seen their ceiling to some degree.
well, they had Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis and
They
Drew
did. They
Holiday.
did. But
This
they
is a
have,
different team.
they still have Derek White and Jalen Brown and Peyton Pritchard and
Yeah,
theoretical Jason Tatum and,
and the best net rating in the
Luke
East right
Garza.
now. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
best net rating point differential in the East with Luke Garza and with um, Jordan Walsh playing minutes, although we'll see if he's going to be in the rotation for a while. Like all these guys. They've
Kata's been a revelation.
Kata,
They're a fun team, man. Like I think it is, as somebody who like completely dismissed the Celtics at the beginning of the year, I now find myself talking myself into them as a serious team. I wonder what they'll do at the deadline. I wonder what's going to happen with Tatum, if anything. They're just
well,
like
the
really,
Celtics.
really interesting.
Celtics, they might have two different incentives. They, might still want to get under the tax.
Yep.
Because this could be their year kind of reset for the tax so that they are not trying to pay luxury taxes for infinite years, which get really, really punitive. And this is the year where they can start that reset. Or if, as you say, they feel like they can get out of the East, they then decide, hey, can we get better this year? Maybe that means taking out a little bit more money, staying in the tax, and increasing your tax payments.
Or
And,
maybe
with
there's a
new
sweet
ownership,
spot.
that's going to be a big test for them.
Yeah, or maybe there's a sweet spot. Like, remember
Maybe.
the Thunder a couple of years ago, everybody wanted them to trade for a big. Instead, they make this Hayward deal. And the Hayward deal actually got them more flexibility and saved them money. But also, they thought they were getting a helpful player.
True.
He didn't end up
That's
helping
true.
them.
He did not.
He didn't end up helping them.
he
But
helped
they
get them-
thought,
Yeah.
it was a win now move and a flexibility move.
That's
So
true.
there may be some kind of deal out there that somehow accomplishes both of these things. I don't know what the hell that looks like, but we'll see what their front office has up their sleeves in the next month. I'm just, like it's so weird talking about the East because I flat out don't think there's a favorite, and I find all of these teams interesting. I also don't find any of these teams that compelling of a matchup for like the Thunder, the Nuggets, or like
Well, that's a
maybe
different
even
conversation.
the Spurs. So it's like it's always weird in terms of like how do you frame this, because it's like it would be an incredible accomplishment by default. Like if you make the finals, you are by definition close to a championship. But like,
But I mean, listen.
I find it
That's
so
what-
hard to imagine any of these teams actually winning the championship.
But James, I'm going to end it here. Last year we said that about Pacers, and they were up
Yeah.
at halftime in Game 7. So
Absolutely,
you never
yeah.
know.
You never know.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Business Decision. James, thank you so much for coming on. Read all of his work at CBS Sports. He does an amazing job covering the league. And I don't mean to say that with any kind of sarcasm. Like, you know so much more about basketball than me. It's
Oh,
ridiculous.
stop it.
I always learn something reading you. Is there anything you want to plug?
No, stop being so nice to me. But thank you for having me on.
It's very much true. Follow James. Follow him on Twitter or Blue Sky at Outside the NBA. And everyone, thank you for watching, for listening, for downloading, hopefully for subscribing on this YouTube channel. You should do that. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Business Decision. See you later. Bye.